Hi, my name is Robert O'Connor. I'm delighted to participate in this meeting and talk about the topic of credible lifestyle information. I'll just give a little bit of background about myself, and I just want to express my appreciation to Safe Food for generating this meeting and for you for engaging with it. I'm the Director of Research for the Irish Cancer Society. I come from an academic and research background, and I don't have any particular expertise in obesity. I won't be talking about that topic, and I don't feel that I have any conflict of interest to declare. So why are we talking about this topic? I suppose we've seen a massive democratization and liberalization of lifestyle communications. We talk about lifestyle issues. There's a vast amount in newspapers, in media, and especially in social media. There are significant benefits to having access to a wealth of information, but there are also significant hazards where we can be misled. I think many of us would feel that we're exposed to information overload. Some of that is clickbait in nature. Some of that information is designed to bring us in and attract our interest, not to inform us or to give us useful information. We're seeing an explosion of various platforms, TikTok in the last while, but WhatsApp, various social media platforms, etc. And they can give us a false sense of knowledge about something because the information that we may get through those portals can be so readily accessible, even if it's not accurate. I think there's a lot of behind the scenes exploitation and new marketing approaches making use of these mechanisms. And there are real challenges around trust, and much of our trust now reflects the community that we come from, the political agenda that we might subscribe to. And trust and who we trust is probably the most defining aspect about our engagement with social media and potentially with lifestyle. So it's a vast area. In a short space of time, I'm just going to focus very briefly on nutritional health claims rather than the wider lifestyle, but hopefully some of the examples can transpose. Nutritional health claims are very old. So in other words, making some health claim about nutrition. And for example, the classic Guinness advertising, Guinness for strength, etc. And today I think we see a massive increase in this. We see a lot more investment in advertising. Used to be TV, and now there's a lot of investment in social media, and increasing scientification. And if you look at the terms that are being used, they've transitioned over the years from things like healthy, natural, etc., which are still used in some ways, but things that have scientific terms in them. They mention the immune system, energy, anti-cancer, etc. More recent examples, yogurts that have been making false claims, and we see children's targeted treats that again make misleading health claims rather than false claims, I think, in this situation. But we can even see it in claims around common garden fruits that completely misdirect people into believing that these are medicines as opposed to something that's part of a balanced diet. We're seeing people engage with that and try and develop careers out of it. So, for example, Pete Evans has developed a very lucrative career and inverted commas documentary, or more correctly, a shockumentary series, which has a lot of misleading information in there, which more is used to market his beliefs than actually empower people with health information. And speaking of influencers, I think it's important to call out that many influencers can do very good things, charity work, or engage on societal issues, prisoners and neglected and undermined groups in our society. But we do need to be cautious in the involvement of health influencers with health issues. And I never thought I would be talking about and citing a person with a bag over their head. But this interview and this documentary by Blind Like Old Club, I think, is really informative of some of the challenges. If you follow this link, you'll see that he and the team developed this concept of Cyanora, which was basically a cyanide-containing health drink. They put it to 3 different influencers who had multiple millions of followers, and for an amount of money they were absolutely willing to tout the benefits of this inverted commas health drink, despite the fact that it contains cyanide. And I think that can illustrate some of the worries of the commercial interest behind what appear to be just normal interactions. We're seeing increased democratization of health. We can go on our computer and we can Google symptoms and all kinds of things. The problem is that can create a massive amount of undue worry in the wrong hands, and it can be misinterpreted. We've got vast access now to basic research information that can go on to PubMed, as can anybody else. And just by way of illustration, Resveratrol is a compound that there was some interest in some years ago. It's found in a lot of fruits and in wines. And if you put large amounts of it into in vitro cultures, you can kill cancer cells, as you can do if you put bleach or even pure water in on those cancer cells. The problem is, if you don't understand the context, that you can't get enough resveratrol into your body, it breaks down very rapidly. There is no way it could be an effective treatment for cancer. You can be under a mistaken belief that it might be better than chemotherapy. People not realizing the limitations of the knowledge actually has a scientific term, the Dunningkruger effect, and it describes people who know so little about something that they think that they are experts in it. And a true expert actually can be seen to recognize their own limitations. There are significant media challenges. I suppose we now have a much more voluminous media cycle. There has to be content all the time on the apps, in newspapers, in 24-hour media. So there's a vast demand for new information, and health is a significant interest to us all. There's a lot of clickbait focus in that, because with the demise of newspapers, we've seen a lot more move over to these more modern social media and app platforms, and they make their money by, they're usually free, they make their money by clicks, by being able to measure the amount of advertising that has been engaged with. Therefore, they need to have more attractive headlines that will get people to engage with them. That does not encourage necessarily accuracy. And bear in mind that about half of all Americans get their news from social media, from Twitter, etc., not from some sort of collated and professionally generated source. I mentioned influencers, and I think we all talk about health a lot more, so it's a lot more in our general conversation with each other. And this has led to lucrative marketing opportunities for individuals and organizations. The ever constant claims around food and health have allowed for this exploitation. So we see people on the fringes of this, like, for example, chefs making all sorts of claims and then making money. I mentioned about Pete Evans. Books about food and health, seminar series, etc., making money. And I suppose being an avenue and a route for people to impart their ideology and their beliefs in the absence of any evidence base, and sometimes contrary to the evidence base. This can generate a lot of revenue for these people, and some individuals can make very lucrative careers for themselves. And it's not just individuals, but other professionals and hospitals even. And unfortunately, there are little sanctions in many jurisdictions to manage and moderate these things. There's a vacuum and a void, I think, for many people who are impacted by ill health. And for example, Erspin is a very professional organization that looks at nutritional needs. And they undertook a survey last year, and it showed that the vast majority of patients want a lot more information around nutrition and diet and support. But we have too few dietitians to support that. We need to treble the number of dietitians in this country if we're to even give a basic level of service, and we are far from being able to deliver that. There's also, I suppose, a confusion in the public, and there can seem to be a mixed message. So we're quite comfortable now with the facts that there probably is an increased risk of certain types of cancer associated particularly with processed meats, and there's a lot of research around the correlations there. And there will always be academic and appropriate academic discourse around, you know, whether something is genuine or not. The problem is that rapidly translates from press releases into statements that appear to be from public health authorities that contradict each other. So is meat good for you? Is meat bad for you? And these conversations are actually much more complex, but can cause real confusion for people. And I think a lot of us would find this very frustrating, and it can make people disengage from things that can actually impact their health in a positive way. Much of the communication around health and lifestyle and wellness, inverted commas, leads to inappropriate understandings in the public mind. So maybe people think that disease is easy, and they mistakenly, for example, think that maybe sugar causes cancer or sugar causes diabetes, things that we know are much more complex. It can lead to undermining of health institutions, hospitals, and people who are actually working to support our health. A belief that, you know, we're worse off when actually we live longer, healthier lives than our parents, and certainly than our grandparents. That there's an easy fix, that if I adopt this diet or if I eat this superfood, that, you know, I'm not going to become unwell. And I suppose two of the simple things that can be said, well, you know, where's the harm in it? Or maybe there's something in it, and those are often kind of used as proxies for people rather than actual evidence. Some folks can, unfortunately, people can become very vulnerable when they suffer ill health, and they can feel that maybe they blame themselves, and this can be exploited, unfortunately, by some lucrative individuals. And again, you know, people think maybe they should have an expectation of, you know, living to be a centenarian, and have no ill health over that. And that is not the reality for many people, unfortunately. So to finish up, how might we approach this, and how might we come to a conclusion? And I think we need to focus on generating credible and empowering lifestyle information, things that people can actually really make use of in their own life, and make a difference to their health trajectory. To do that, we need to invest in education and investing in people at different ages to help them understand their health trajectories. And that may be different how you might educate a teenager versus an older person. We need to invest in warnings and safeguards so that people understand misinformation and are alert and attentive to the tools and techniques that are used. We need far better regulation to make people who go down this path, and companies, legally and financially responsible for their misinformation. So they need to be much more careful. And that regulation includes professionals to ensure that they subscribe to codes of practice, which will have sanction if they go outside of those. And then finally, we need to market in the same way that much of this lifestyle information is marketed by influencers, etc. So we need to adopt the same playbooks. We need professionals who are health influencers, so that we're not reliant on chefs or celebrities, but actually on people who know what they're talking about. And invest in a broader multi-year health communication strategy, which isn't just about giving a leaflet, but actually trying to design ways that people engage and understand the health information. So those are just a few thoughts. Thanks very much for your time, and I hope you have found it interesting.